What's going on, everybody? This is Moose here at OccupyFantasy.com. Here with Brian and Jake from Occupy and from MMADFS.com. Here to break down UFC 260. So let's just jump right into it. Again, I'm Moose at CFB_Moose. I'm co-founder and the data expert here at Occupy Fantasy. Follow me at CFB_Moose on Twitter. At the top right of your screen, we have our other co-founder, Brian at BrianJesterFF on Twitter. How are you today, man?
Doing good, Moose. We got the madness going on. We got some hockey tonight. Big UFC 260 event. I mean, it's a great gambling DFS day.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And at the bottom right of your screen, we have Jake, who helps write our MMA DFS daily plug. He also has his own site, MMADFS.com, which is an absolutely fantastic free resource. Everyone should always go ahead and check that out, in addition to what we have here at Occupy Fantasy. But Jake, how are you tonight?
Good, man. Glad to be here. The slate looks pretty good. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. So let's jump right into it. First question here we have from John. Says, if Woodley loses tonight, Danny's going to let him fight Jake Paul. I don't know about either of you all, but I am looking forward to that Jake Paul fight in a couple weeks. It should be really fun.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. Anytime we can get it in the internet, I'm down for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jake, I'll kick this off to you. You wrote the daily plug. You write for MMADFS.com. What's your overall take on the slate? And I'll just hand it off to you for a couple minutes.
Yeah, man. So we got another 10-fight card, which we had last week, and we haven't had a ton of them. Normally we get a little bit more, but I think it looks like a good one. I mean, we have a good main event. Should be a high-scoring winner in that. We get some good fights. Hopefully, fingers crossed that we don't lose anything in the next couple hours. But no, I mean, I like it. We got a couple like exciting fights. We get O'Malley. We got a few other guys. We only had one new fighter on the slate, so that's kind of unusual. Normally we get a few more of those. We got a couple guys coming off extended layoffs. Overall, it's a fun slate. I think we're gonna have some good fights.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely agree with that too. And so Brian, I'll kick it off to you. I know we talked about, or Jake said, there's a 10-fight card, and you're probably the most ultimate high risk player that we have here. What does that 10-fight card mean if you're making high risk lineups?
Yeah, so it doesn't change a whole lot on FanDuel, and we'll talk about that later. And if you read the daily plug, you can read the lineup strategies for FanDuel. The number of fights on the card doesn't really impact your FanDuel decision making too much. But it's on DraftKings is where it really gets interesting, because if you're playing the big GPPs, if you're using our lineup builder, if you're playing single entry, 3 max GPPs, and you don't want to chop with 10 or more people, you want a unique or at least a close to unique lineup, then the way you do that is with limiting the number of high-owned fighters you have and limiting the amount of salary that you use. And on a 9, 10, 11 fight card, we're able to use significantly less salary. These less than 49K total salary lineups win way more often when there are less fights on the card. And Jake, it makes a ton of sense, right? If there are 13, 14, 15 fights, there are a ton more favorites that can win and be in the optimal lineup, where on a 10-fight card, we just need a couple to bust or not score as well, and we can easily see the optimal lineup leave a few $1,000s or even $1,000 left over.
For sure, man. We just need a few things to break our way, like 50% less than some of these 15 fight cards. I mean, yeah, way easier to, we see some of these have a lot of money left over, like 1,700, sometimes more. So yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said.
Definitely. Now, again, for people watching here, we're going to be here till about 5:30 or so, give or take. So if you have questions about the fight, about lineup strategy, high risk, low risk, FanDuel, DraftKings, whatever, or you just want to come in and chat and say hi, go ahead and say that. If you like what you see here, definitely go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe, and bell notification. And if you want to join our Discord, you can go ahead and hit the join button down below. For the monthly fee, you get access to our Discord. We can always chop it up with Brian, Jake, myself, everyone from Occupy, and our members. A very, very, very fun time. So, Jake, I'll kick it up back over to you. Let's talk about the main event for a second. Stipe and Francis. What's your take on that? What's your analysis on that?
Yeah, so I think both guys have really high floors. I mean, the way that Ngannou wins is with a round 1 KO, maybe a round 2 KO, but I mean, really, he's kind of a round 1 or bust fighter, whereas Stipe, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people saw the last time these guys fought. he was literally trying to control him, clinch him, grapple him, take him down the entire fight, which really lends itself to DraftKings scoring. So Stipe put up like 140 points in a 5-round decision, which normally with heavyweight decisions, we're like, oh, it's going to be a low-scoring fight, low volume. But it's all grappling. Like, Stipe does not want to have a striking battle here, whereas Francis is just looking to knock him out in the first round. The last time they fought, Francis had his hands on his hips, his mouth wide open after the first round. He looked exhausted. He didn't even look dangerous after that. And, I mean, this is like the most dangerous fighter in the world. And he was a different guy after the first round last time.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Jake, like, how much – and this is an unknown variable, right? He can say he's been training. We could believe him. We could not believe him. But it's part of the unknown variable in MMA DFS. Maybe he is a 5-round cardio guy. The blessing and the curse of his last few fights, where he just absolutely murdered people in the first 30 seconds, like 4 straight times, is that he hasn't been past the first round. And so we haven't seen him test this potentially newfound cardio. So it's an interesting fight, and you'll play it a lot differently depending on whether you're on FanDuel or DraftKings. And both guys rank differently depending on which site you're playing on in our model.
Yeah, you're right about that. And we can actually jump over to that here. I'm going to go ahead. I'm on OccupyFantasy.com. We were on the Daily Plug. That's written by Jake, but we're going to go ahead and hop over to the MMA Occupy model very quickly. And while that's loading, you'll see here Stipe, based off DraftKings OF Index, is second. And then trying to find Francis is all the way down here. But if you flip with FanDuel, it's a little bit different. Francis is actually higher, and then Stipe is a little bit further down. So definitely depends on what site you're playing on. So yeah, definitely go ahead and check the model for that information. Looking here, Jamar says, let's see here. It has 2 things. Let's see, Nurmagomedov, if I said that right. Usually, pronunciation can be very difficult for some of these fighters. But if any one of y'all want to talk about him, is he a good fight, high risk, low risk? What do you think, Jake?
I think he's a really good DraftKings play. He's going to shoot for a ton of takedowns, and he's going against a really inexperienced fighter in Gooden. So I think he has the potential to get like 12, 13 minutes of control time, get some ground strikes, get like 4 or 5 takedowns, and really just control the fight that way. If it stays on the feet, I think it's a little bit dicier for him. We have seen him get finished at times, and Gooden has been a finisher, even though he's really just a brawler. I don't think Gooden really has much of a grappling game, but he does have some submissions. But I see that fight playing out one of 2 ways. Either Nurmagomedov takes him down, controls him, and just tires him out. Like, the guy initially missed weight, Gooden, but then he came back and made weight, so he might have even less of a gas tank. So I think he either just controls the whole fight on the ground, or else Gooden lands something earlier and potentially finishes him. So I think Gooden is a better FanDuel play, and Nurmagomedov is a better DraftKings play. I swear I could say that name fine earlier, but
I mean, but that goes to show too, right? Like, Gooden, if he wins, he's probably defending takedowns, which is good for FanDuel scoring. If he wins, it's probably because he's getting it done on the feet. And Gooden has shown good takedown defense, but he's been fighting dudes on the regional scene, and a guy in his UFC debut is not known for his takedowns, not fighting someone of like the Nurmagomedov bloodline, which is a far different wrestling experience. Right. So I think it's a good fight to target. It just depends on what site you're playing on. I like Gooden on both sides personally, but I think Nurmagomedov, like Jake said, moves is definitely the better DraftKings play.
Yeah, and then he also has a follow-up question. I see the one of you off if you want to take it, but in low-risk contests, what is the point of stacking the main event?
I'll quickly answer it. It's
lineup.
In low-risk contests, your point is to just beat half the field, 50% of the entrants. You get the same no matter whether you finish 50th percentile or first percentile. And the way to get across that line is to guarantee yourself a high score with one of your. So by stacking the main event, whoever wins, you're going to get a loss, but you're also guaranteeing a 100-point score more than likely for your lineup, which is a great push to get across that 50% mark. Jake, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I mean, I would say on most of these main events, they're kind of coin flips. The people not stacking the main event are going to be wrong half the time, and you're only trying to beat half the field. So basically, it's like a free win just by stacking it.
Yeah, pretty much. And then question here from Christian. better play. Thank you for correcting. He says Luke, Nurmagomedov, or Luke on DraftKings, but I think he means O'Malley. So, Jake, I'll ask that one to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think both guys are solid on DraftKings, O'Malley and Nurmagomedov. I think maybe O'Malley has a slightly higher ceiling, but I think he's a little bit riskier just based on his past health. With he's lost 2 out of his last 4 fights. Or I'm sorry, he's gotten injured in 2 of his last 4 fights with the foot injury. He lost the last one to Cheeto Vera. But I think both guys are solid. I mean, I think you're kind of splitting hairs at that point. They're both like really high odds guys. Both guys should score well, especially on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I definitely like O'Malley better.
Okay, cool. And then Brian, let's change subjects here a little bit. You and I were talking about this earlier with DraftKings and FanDuel pricing. There's one fighter on here who's very mispriced on DraftKings, Minifield. Do you want to talk about him for a little bit?
Absolutely. So Alonzo Minifield, who is generally a fighter we don't like to play, at least over the past year or so since we've been playing UFC DFS, a guy we'd like to target against or fade his fights. And he was scheduled to fight William Knight this week, but William Knight pulled out early in the week, and they gave Minifield a late replacement in Fabio Serrant, who's making his UFC debut on short notice. And as a result, DraftKings, they released their pricing early in the week because it was a pay-per-view event. And Minifield priced at 8,100 because he was basically a coin flip versus Knight. But now with this late replacement coming in, Minifield, as of right now, he's minus 285 or so on the money line, which means at an $8,100 price tag, he's massively mispriced. He should be, $8,900, $9K in that range. And so low risk contests, easy play, right? You get a guy who's mispriced by $1,000 based on his win probability, someone you easily play. But for me, these are the situations, Jake, where my eyes up, especially a fighter who's not that great like Minifield, where he has the potential to bust, and on a 10-fight card, his projected ownership, you have him in the 60% range. I mean, even higher, 67% right now in the latest update. Like, if he busts or somehow gets upset, I mean, we're lapping the field, and Minifield's the perfect type of fighter that could bust.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, just look at the odds. His round 1 odds are implying he has about a 25% chance to get a finish. And he's a round 1 or bust fighter, I think 8 of his 9 wins have come by KO as a pro, and 7 of those have been in round 1. So, I mean, if you look at his inside the distance line, they think he could get it done later because he's a 55% chance to win the fight just overall early, which seems like a weird disconnect because I feel like I really feel like he's a round 1 or bust fighter. I feel like the 25% is too low and the 55 is probably too high. I honestly think it's probably like a 40% chance that he gets the round 1 KO, which is still like 50% more below his projected ownership. So, I mean, yeah, I'm sure you're just like loving this spot. I mean, I'm kind of curious, like, how much are you playing any Minifield? A little bit? I mean, what's your strategy here?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So if I do play Minifield, and my lineups are already built, I'm playing him in those super low salary lineups. I'm playing him maybe in a fight where I'm not stacking the main event, because the first thing people are going to do is stick in Minifield. He's 67% mispriced. Play a main event fighter, use most of the salary. Now I'm already in there with most of the field. And you'll see there's a ton of duplicates when we get a mispriced fighter. 60% or higher ownership, the duplicates just bunch up together. So if you do decide to use Minifield and you like him, and like Jake said, there's a good reason. There's probably like a 40% chance he just crushes this dude in the first round. Then you want to make sure you're using him in a lineup that benefits from some other type of chaos on the slate, whether that's low-owned fighters or cheaper fighters or the main event not getting there.
Right. Makes a lot of sense.
Definitely. A couple people in here asking about specific fights. And Jake, I'll pass it back to you. Are there any fights to target? And the people in the chat are asking about the Worthy, Malarkey, or the Bakakis fight. Any fights you're targeting from there? Or if not, what fights are you targeting?
Yeah, I mean, those are my 2. Like, those are the 2 that I'm targeting heavy, like, outside of the main event. I really like Malarkey. I think he's in a great spot, especially on DraftKings. I think Worthy makes a lot of sense on FanDuel, but Malarkey leads the slate on takedowns landed, attempted, and missed. Let me pull it up real quick, make sure I have it right, but he's shot for 26 takedowns in his 2 UFC fights, and he's only landed 8. He's gone 3 for 15. and then he went 5 for 11. So, I mean, either he's going to continue to shoot for a crazy number, which I think he's going to keep doing it in this fight, and land them and be a great smash play on both sides, or Worthy is going to defend like 10 takedowns in this spot and just destroy points on FanDuel with takedowns defended. So I really like stacking that fight, but more so splitting it across the two sites. Although if Worthy wins, there's a good chance it comes early, so he would still probably be a good play on DraftKings, but he definitely looks like a better play on FanDuel. And then the other fight, the Bukakis Miocic.
That's definitely 100% how you say it, for sure.
Yeah. McCall, like even his first name's hard. Yeah. Definitely didn't look at the pronunciations. Mihal, let's go. Mihal Olukshajek. We'll call him Oli.
There we go.
He's got a history of finishes. I think he's got round 1 wins, like in 3 of the last 4, I want to say. I'm sorry, 2 of the last 4. He got knocked out in the last one. Should probably have this information pulled up. But either way, that's going to be a high volume fight that's almost definitely going to end early. Like, I think it ends in the first 2 rounds with a KO. It's hard to say who wins. Bukakis, his last 13 fights, he has 14 fights in his career. His last 13 ended early. So I think that's a great fight to target from a finishing perspective. There's not going to be any grappling. So if it does go longer, it's not going to score well just off of volume alone. So that's the one risk with it, is you need it to end early.
Yeah. And Moose, if you do decide to play Bukakis, for those of you watching, just have patience. He might get knocked out early, but this dude, if just charting his numbers in his pre-UFC days, and even in one of his UFC fights, I mean, he's seemingly behind all the time, and then he'll come behind with a KO later after the other fighter tires out. So that's kind of what you're banking on here, because he is fighting a better fighter in Oli. But if he can outlast him, he could get the KO late in round 1 or in the later rounds.
That's true, and he's cheaper. So I mean, if he gets a later KO, he could still pay off as an underdog, especially if not many dogs hit, because he's only 7,700 on DraftKings and $12 on FanDuel. So potentially even a round 3 KO, like any finish for him would be fine. I don't think a decision would be enough, but you never know. I mean, maybe we'll see crazy volume.
Yeah, you never know with that. And then, Brian, are there any other fights that Jake didn't mention that you're targeting?
No, I don't think so. I think those are most of the fights that I'm looking at. Christian has a good here in the chat about which underdogs are we looking at. I think we've hit on Malarkey a bit already. We talked about Bukakis. The one fight we haven't talked about is the Miranda Maverick and Jillian Robertson fight. And Maverick is a fighter that I was pretty high on coming into her UFC debut. And Jake and I disagreed on that fight during her debut. And it couldn't have went as poorly as for Jake or as well for me as it could have. The doctor stopped it after round 1. And she got the ultimate round 1 points for round 1 KO. But again, that's in the past. And Jake, I think this is the perfect sell high spot on Maverick after she had was literally the perfect debut. And I think Robertson's a great underdog pick here for DFS on both sites, but DraftKings especially.
Yeah, totally. So in fairness, I wasn't betting against Maverick. I was betting that fight would just bust overall.
Right.
But anyways, old news. So yeah, I totally agree with you. We didn't see any grappling from her in her debut, where we were expecting all grappling, and then it turned into a striking match. But she had like a really terrible opponent, so that's sort of understandable. This time, Robertson's a great grappler, and she's coming off a really tough loss, which is gonna lower her ownership. I mean, this is like they're coming in with exact opposite situations. Maverick is coming off like the best win you could have, and Robertson's coming off the worst loss you could have. So of course we're gonna see this come back to the middle somewhere. Maverick has to look worse. She can't look better, and Robertson cannot look worse. So I mean, she's definitely gonna look better. I think we see more of a grappling match, and I think Robertson has more experience. So I mean, she could definitely throw up like some crazy submission. The biggest concern for me is Maverick looks more powerful and better on the feet, and Robertson is coming off a fight where she got beat by a more powerful opponent who was better on the feet. So that's the only thing that has me nervous. But other than that, totally agree. I like the sell high and the buy low opportunity on Robertson here.
Nice. So great question there, Christian. Great question from everyone so far. Again, if you have questions, we're here for about 8 more minutes or so. Jake, I'll ask this question to you because I know Brian, you don't play too much UFC FanDuel, but what are some of your favorite FanDuel MVPs?
Yeah. So I think it's going to be a lot of the people we've talked about in terms of, I mean, avoiding the top price guys. I actually think the main event is not going to be the highest scoring, but I think the perception will be that it is going to be. But I think, if Ngannou gets the finish, it's going to come really early with like one knockdown and like 4 punches and nothing else. So he's not going to be able to prop up his score with anything, Like he would need like a 2 knockdown, like 5 takedowns defended performance to be the top scorer, which seems unlikely. And Stipe, his grappling heavy approach isn't going to really score well on FanDuel. Like it put up a huge number on DraftKings, but only scored like just over 100 points on FanDuel. So I think the first step is you don't play the main event in the MVP spot. And then you have a big advantage over the field just from that. And then I'm not really thinking Sean O'Malley is a great play. I think he would also need like a multi-knockdown performance to be the highest scorer. So I think he's going to be another popular guy that, I mean, if he has a career performance, then he could be the highest scorer. But if not, I think you're basically going to have like 50% of the field playing those 3 guys. So you can just cut that off. And look at some of the guys we've talked about. Look at the Bukakis Alexejek fight. Look at Worthy. Look at Maverick. Look at Malarkey. And even a guy like Gooden, he could get a bunch of takedowns defended and a finish. And, I mean, if you're going to play Gooden on FanDuel, it makes sense to put him in the MVP spot.
Yeah, that's the guy I was looking at, Jake. Gooden, like if you're playing the tournament over there, 15K to first, or even the smaller one, like if you're going to play Gooden, just put him in the MVP spot because he does have the potential to be the highest scorer if he wins. And like you said in the plug, I think this is a point that a lot of people forget. It's like, man, it's risky to put an underdog in my MVP spot. But if you're going to win a tournament, Moose, you need all 6 fighters to win anyway. So if you're going to have an underdog win, why not have a high upside guy that finishes and gets the most points on the slate?
Right,
absolutely.
Right. Only look at the upside here.
Yeah, you're going to need an underdog, and if you don't, again, to help you with duplicates, put that underdog in your MVP spot so he's super low owned and you don't have to worry about being duped. But speaking of low owned fighters, Brian, are there any other low owned fighters? I know we talked about just FanDuel MVPs, but any particularly low owned fighters that you're liking that's going to fly under the radar?
They're pretty gross. So if you look at our projected ownership, we have 4 guys that are projected under 20% on DraftKings, which is pretty crazy on a 10-fight slate. But the Gooden, who we've mentioned, and my favorite sub 20% guy on the slate, and we've hit on him at end here. Shane Young, who's in a tough matchup, and I think is a pretty fight for DFS overall, but he's under 20%. Thomas Almeida against O'Malley, and what you would be hoping for there is O'Malley's foot acts up again and Almeida is able to finish him. That's what you're hoping for there. And then Charant against Minifield, who we don't think Minifield's a great fighter, and Charant only 1 loss on his career, but not a great fighter by any means. But again, 12% ownership against a 67% owned fighter. Like that's the ultimate chaos you need. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does happen, Justin James versus I can't remember who it was, Jake, but when James knocked him out in the first round,
Frank Camacho.
Yeah, Camacho just flipped the entire slate immediately. And I mean, that's exactly what you're looking for in tournaments.
Yeah,
definitely. Excuse me, Jake. Is there any other low-owned fighters that you wanna mention or no?
I mean, I really like Malarkey. I mean, Malarkey and Robertson, they're right over that low-owned threshold, but I think Gooden and Young would be the 2 I'm looking at. And Almeida, you're really just being like, all right, maybe O'Malley's foot isn't healed, like Brian said. And yeah, I mean, I think if you get an injury finish, it's prone to score a little bit less because like normally the guy falls down opposed to getting knocked down. Like I think Vera scored like 98 DraftKings points in a round 1 win. So like he's probably not going to be the highest scorer on the slate if you're thinking injury standpoint, but he could definitely put up a useful score. So I don't know what the Vegas line on O'Malley's foot giving out is, but that's the number you should play Almeida.
Nice. Speaking of betting, we have to do this every week, and now that all 3 of us on here, we definitely have to make sure this one will stick. This is our parlay, our YouTube stream parlay of the week for UFC 260, where each of us pick a leg of a parlay, put it all together, and let's hope we all win together. So Jake, I'll ask you first. What's going to be your leg of the parlay?
I got a few that I was considering, and I think I'm gonna go with O'Malley round 1 KO at plus 360.
Okay, cool. And then Brian,
Those are great odds.
Yeah. I'll kick it over to you, Brian, for the next one.
I mean, I've been talking about him for most of the video. I think I have to go with this because if he does win, I think this is how it happens. And so I'll add Jared Gooden to win inside the distance. Looks like it's plus 450 right now across the board. So Gooden inside the distance plus 450.
Nice. And for me, I love my submission bets, so I'm gonna go ahead with Miranda Maverick, Jillian Robertson. That fight ends in a submission plus 270.
I like that.
Definitely.
Very nice. Very nice. And so Jake, you have that bet mentioned in your best bet section of the plug. You have the O'Malley bet listed, and then the Gooden bet I went a little rogue there, but you do have Gooden. It wins by round 1 KO plus 16. That's in your crazy bet section. So I think we're all on the same page here, though.
Yeah, I almost did Gooden inside the distance. It was between those two, and I needed one more really long shot, so I went with that one. But I don't hate Gooden inside the distance. I think that's a good value.
Nice. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in here at William Hill Sportsbook in Virginia. You can go ahead and check OccupyFantasy.com. We have a link to our bonus section. If you're in any of the legal sports betting states, you can use our links and promo codes to get over $1,000 in free money. Definitely go ahead and do that. And you can tail us on the parlay too, so we'll all win. Brian, I'll kick it to you one last time. Is there any last lingering thoughts or anything you want to add?
I do want to add on to the sports betting promos again. If you're in a legal state, like they're giving away money, just giving out money to new users, and it's March Madness time, and there's some books out there that have bets, which again you can get through our links in the betting tab on OccupyFantasy.com, where all you have to do is bet $1 and you win $100 or more if a team scores, which is pretty much guaranteed in the basketball game. So yeah, go take advantage of that free money. Bet some of these bets that we've been talking about that Jake has listed in the plug. Go do it. But again, 10 fight slate tonight. It's a really interesting card. The main event should be super exciting. I'm excited for the card as a whole, and I think there's a decent amount of underdogs that can get there. So I think it's a good slate to leave salary.
Definitely. And then Jake, I'll pass it to you. Nick has one final question. Said if you had to choose one, Trent or Young, who would you pick? And then if you have any last lingering thoughts.
I like Young more. I think he's like a high volume fighter who I think that fight probably goes the distance and he could still put up a usable score in a decision there. I mean, Morales is a tough guy to really land volume on, but I prefer Young. I'm not really on Charant. I get the game theory element of Charant, but like in terms of actually watching him and thinking he's like good, I'm not really on him there.
Definitely not the case for sure. It's pure math play. That's all it is. Definitely not an eyes and ears test.
Right.
Definitely. Cool. So that'll do it. Again, everyone here watching, if you like what you saw, definitely go ahead and hit that like button. That really helps us out. Hit the subscribe and bell notification to be notified of when we upload new videos or we do new live streams here on YouTube. And if you want to join our Discord channel, go ahead and hit that join button down below. Sync your YouTube and Discord account, and you can chat up with all of us and more of the Occupy staff and members going forward. But until next time, Moose, Brian, and Jake from OccupyFantasy.com.